Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Today's theme, if there is one, oh wait a second, there we go. If there is a theme, is cleaning out the freezer and the crisper, and we're gonna make a baked pasta. So, I've got a pot on here, we're gonna make the sauce first. In the bottom of the pot, I'm gonna put a little bit of bacon fat. And then, to that, I'm gonna add a little bit of frozen bacon. I had just the tiniest little bit of frozen bacon wrapped up in the freezer. It's one of those things that I passed over every time I needed more for another recipe. So today I figured out how I'm going to use it. In it goes. The bacon is just getting a little bit of crispy around the edges, a little bit of browning in the bottom of the pot. I think that's good enough. Now I'm going to add carrot, celery, and onion. We'll get that into the pot. Stir it around. Now, I'm not really looking to get any browning on these onions or the celery or the carrot. I just want to soften them, make them translucent, and we're pretty much at that point. So, I'm going to dump these out into a bowl. Then, back onto the heat, and out of the freezer, I was looking for something else, and I realized I had this little bit of, that's ground pork, so that's going to go in. And then in this container, I had a little bit of ground pork and a little bit of ground beef. In that goes. And we're going to fry those up until they're browned. Now, this isn't super brown, but it's brown enough for me today. So I'm going to put the veg back in. Stir that around. And we'll open up a spot here in the middle. Deep in the freezer, I found these containers. This one, tomato paste. If I have a half can of tomato paste left over, I'll just put it into one of these plastic jars, stick it in the freezer, remember to use it later. This one was way at the bottom. Don't remember how long it's been in there, but it is, looking at it, it's perfectly fine. Maybe a little dry at the top, but otherwise, perfectly fine. This one, again, perfectly fine. Don't remember how long it's been in there. This is Moody pizza sauce. So, I'm going to put that in, but first, I'm just going to stir on the bottom here, and you can see it gets nice and brown. Just trying to caramelize some of those sugars that are in it. Get everything off of the spoon. Then, in goes the pizza sauce. Stir that in. This is one of those non-recipes where some of my ingredients aren't quantifiable, like that pizza sauce. If you don't have half a can of pizza sauce to put in, don't really worry about it too much. You're going to put in other tomatoes and other flavors, and it's all going to come together. I'm just trying to use stuff up, and I'm also trying to show you that you don't have to be terribly precious with a lot of this stuff. That if it's a group of flavors that you like, they're going to go together. And in this case, a tomato-based sauce, pizza sauce, isn't out of place flavor-wise with what we're trying to achieve. Next in, I have a little bit of wine. This has been in the fridge a couple days. We didn't finish it. It's pretty good wine, actually. It won a silver award, so it's not the best, but it's not the worst. It just needed food, so it's going to become food. Now, if you don't want to cook with wine, totally get it. There is a thing about alcohol. Alcohol is a solvent, and some of the flavors or flavonoids that are present in this pot, only alcohol will release them, or alcohol will be the best way to release them. It's also going to add a little bit of an acid component. You could just put in a little bit of stock and some vinegar. You could use verjus, which is a green grape juice that's fairly high in acid content and kind of works the same as wine. Don't overthink it. It could just be beef or chicken stock. You just want a little bit of liquid in the bottom to start to scrape up the brown bits. So, you know, if it was a half a cup of water with 2 tablespoons of vinegar, you would probably come to pretty close to the same end. So there we go. That's looking like a really good sauce at this point. Next in, tomatoes, just a can of tomatoes. Some pepper, some cinnamon, and a little bit of nutmeg. It's probably enough nutmeg. Marmite. Can't make a tomato-based sauce without a little bit of Marmite. About a tablespoon, I guess. And we'll stir that in. Put the lid on, turn it to low, and let that go for about 2 hours. It smells like it's done. It looks like it's done too. Let's give it a little taste and see where we are. Well, that's good. That's really good. There's something about the cinnamon that really adds just that little bit of extra to the sauce. It's not for everybody. Really, it's not for everybody. And I get that. So if you're not into experimenting and you don't want to try it, leave it out. I really like it in this preparation. Now, salted water coming up to a boil here. Looked in the pantry, and I've got a bunch of part bags of pasta. I've got some bow ties, I've got some ears, and some elbows. I want 900 grams worth of dry pasta to cook, I think, to fill this dish, and for the amount of sauce that I've got going here. Okay, the water is up to a boil, so in with the bow ties, and probably half of these elbows, and the ears. So while the pasta bubbles away here, I've got some provolone, and I have I think that's a 9x13. So Julie and I will have this for dinner tonight, and then we will probably eat that all next week for lunch. But you could put it into smaller containers. If you have a smaller family or you live alone, put it into smaller containers and freeze it. It'll freeze incredibly well. And you can just take it out, thaw it on like a Tuesday night, thaw it overnight, and then when you come home from work on Wednesday, stick it in the oven and do the final heat through. That's all it takes. So this is a great make-ahead meal, I guess I'm saying. So I've got a piece of provolone, and I like to use provolone in this one because it melts really well. So I'm just going to cut some slices off. Now, I'm going to coat the bottom of this. I've coated the bottom of the pan in butter. And I'm going to throw in some panko because I had panko in the cupboard. Best by 29th of March, 2022. I know how Best Buys work. It doesn't mean that it's gone bad. It hasn't gone bad. It's still fine. But you know, it's been hanging around a while, so it's probably time to finish this bag up. So I'm going to sprinkle some on the bottom of the pan. And I'll save what's left in here for the middle and the top. Now, use any breadcrumb that you want, or don't use breadcrumbs at all. I mean, I've got some breadcrumbs here of the ends of breads that we hang on to make bread pudding. I could easily crush those up and put them in the bottom. Panko isn't technically a breadcrumb. I think we just say breadcrumb in English because we don't know what else to call panko. If you've never really seen the method by which they cook it, you should look it up. It's very interesting. Instead of baking a loaf of bread and then drying it out and crumbling it up, they take bread dough and they don't bake it. They cook it by shooting it, by putting it between two electrodes and then shooting an incredible amount of electricity through it. They essentially electrocute it, which is why you get those shards of crumb instead of round crumb. That's what gives it its texture, its crunch, the way that it's cooked. It's not baked. Okay, pasta is cooked, so drain as much of the liquid out as I can. And then into the sauce. Give that a stir and get the pasta completely coated with the sauce before we put it into the cooking pan. Get that all stirred together. Now, okay, I got really excited and I pressed the wrong button on the camera. So I put down a layer of the pasta and the sauce. I put down the provolone, and now I'm grating on some pecorino because I had pecorino in the fridge. the only thing that I bought for this meal is the provolone. Everything else was stuff that I either had, that had to go, or that, is just stuff that I always have in the kitchen anyway. And so you just layer this out. Another layer, if you have enough breadcrumbs, I don't have enough panko. I would put breadcrumbs in the middle layer as well. I don't have that luxury today because I'm using up what I have. Okay, so I'll just smooth that out. Put on some provolone. You could grate the provolone on as well if you wanted. And then some pecorino. And then final layer of panko. Now the oven's preheated to 350. You need half an hour, 45 minutes, just to heat it through, melt the cheese, bring the whole thing together.
Hey, Glenn. Hey,
Jules.
friends. Fork. Is it lasagna? No, I see macaronis.
It's
Are they macaroni?
It's pantry, freezer, fridge, clean out, baked pasta.
Hey, that's my favorite kind.
So it's everything that we had that,
Did you throw lots of extra vegetables in? Like this is going like a lasagna when you're like, oh, and looks like these carrots are gonna and these broccolis.
So I didn't. And you know what? The carrot and the onion and the celery
Okay,
needed to go.
So yeah, that's perfect.
But we didn't have any peppers or anything in the house, but if I'd had peppers, I would have put peppers in.
Yeah.
Frozen corn.
Pasta's really forgiving
frozen
that
peas.
way.
Frozen peas would be great in this, yeah.
Pasta's a very forgiving dish that way. You've got the cheese, the pasta, the tomato, and then anything else almost goes.
So out of the freezer, there was a half can of pizza sauce and a half can of this. So little bits of ground beef and pork. 3 different kind of pasta noodles because we had part bags of each.
Oh, don't you hate that? You get down, you've got like this little tiny much. Yeah, a little tiny bit, sorry. That's pretty good, Glenn.
Yeah. So from
And
this...
it's such a damp, cold day. This is great.
It is damp, spring, cold day. So this isn't a recipe. This is a method. What I want to show you is that you can just take a bunch of things that sort of go together and make a really good quality dinner out of it. Just all of those little bits that you've got in the freezer or the back of the fridge and come up with something that's tasty and filling.
Or whatever's on the sale cart.
Yeah. Yeah. If ground beef was on the sale cart, well, you don't see that much anymore.
No.
But
Big bag of peppers.
yeah, all of that stuff. And it's the method, it's the idea that I want you to sort of grab, and I want you to be fearless in the kitchen and just give stuff a try.
Keep shoveling it in.
Yeah. So,
I like the cheese though. That's not the usual cheese.
it's provolone. It's
Oh.
the only thing I bought to put in this was some provolone, and then I grated some pecorino on top.
So that adds a nice little twist to the flavor.
Bottom of the bag of panko that had best before date of a year ago, over a year ago at this point. So, it's a method. Give it a try. Use your imagination. It's going to be fine. That's lunch for the next week. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.
Yeah, which one of those cheeses really adds an interesting kind of. Woo!
The pecorino's kind of a high note, and the yeah, that's good.
So much better than, so much more flavor than mozzarella. Without the embarrassing, sticky part.
Okay.
Shake and shot.